In His name be He glorified. Peace be upon you and God's mercy and blessings forever and ever. My dear loyal brothers, firstly, owing to numerous signs and a number of incidents, it is now certain that the enemies of the Risale-i Nur and of the Nur students have devised numerous plans in order to induce some of the select students to give up their service of the Risale-i Nur or to weaken their resolve by discovering some of their weak veins of character. We shall describe one or two of them as a warning lesson. First example, so as to turn the attention and thought of a few of our select brothers who are unshakably attached to the Risale-i Nur in another direction, or to occupy them with a pleasurable, spiritual way and impair their devotion to their duties in serving belief, some people are preoccupying these brothers with phenomena like communicating with the dead and with jinns, which is known as spiritualism, and even conversing with the great saints and even prophets, which formerly was the realm of the soothsayers, who are now known as mediums. This phenomenon proceeds from philosophy and from Europe and can be extremely harmful to the believers. It is open to exploitation of many sorts, and if it contains one truth, this is mixed with 10 falsehoods. For since there is no touchstone, no criterion to differentiate between truth and falsehood, the jinns which assist evil spirits and a Satan may possibly cause harm both to the hearts of those who busy themselves with it and to Islam. For there are disclosures which they call spiritual matters, but which are contrary to the truths of Islam and general beliefs. Evil spirits present themselves as good spirits or even as great saints and may attempt to cause harm to the basic principles of Islam by saying things opposed to them. They may twist the truth and deceive ingenious people completely. For instance, the sun appears in a fragment of glass with its light, heat, and shape. But if the tiny image of the sun in the fragment were to speak and say, "My light floods the whole world, my heat warms everything," and if it were to say that it was 1,000,000 times larger than the globe of the earth, it would be understood just how contrary to the truth it was. In exactly the same way, while a prophet resides in his true station, which is like the sun, the appearance of a manifestation of it that accords with the fragment-like capacity of a spiritualist or medium cannot speak in the name of that reality. If he does, it would be contrary to it 100 times over. The insignificant manifestation reflected in spiritualism or mediumship can in no way be compared with the sacred nature of the non-material sun that is the recipient of revelation. For a fragment of glass at the lowest of the low cannot be brought side by side with the reality of that non-material sun at the highest of the high. To attempt to do so is utter disrespect. Only drawing close to the station of prophethood by progressing through a spiritual journeying, some of the saints like Jalaluddin al-Suyuti were graced with the sun's conversation. But, as is proved in the Risale-i Nur, such progress, a sort of conversation through the sainthood of the prophets, upon whom be blessings and peace, occurs in accordance with the saints' degrees and their capacities. The reality of prophethood is far higher than sainthood. The communications and conversation experienced by means of spiritualism or spiritual advancement can in no way approach communication with true prophets, and so cannot be a basis of new rulings of the Sharia. The calling up of spirits does not come from religion, but from the sensitivity of philosophy, and is an action that is opposed both to truth and to good conduct. It is a grievous insult and lack of respect to attract those at sacred stations at the highest of the high to the Ouija boards, the seat of lies, at the lowest of the low. It is just like summoning the king to a hovel. What is pure truth, decency, respect, and benefit is such persons as Jalaluddin al-Suyuti, Jalaluddin Rumi, and Imam Rabbani rising through their spiritual journeyings like the journeyings of spirit beings, and their drawing close to those holy prophets and profiting from them. Evil spirits and Satan cannot assume the form of prophets in true dreams. But when spirits are called up, evil spirits may say that they are prophets and may speak in a way that is contrary to the prophets upon whom the blessings and peace sunnah and the Shariah's injunctions. If what they say is contrary to them, it is clear evidence that the ones speaking are not good spirits. They are not believing and Muslim jinns, they are evil spirits, and imitate them in this way. Secondly, the Nur students are not now in need of instruction in such matters. The Risale-i Nur explains the truth about everything and leaves no need for other expositions. The Risale-i Nur is enough for them. It is, however, imperative that people other than the Nur students do not heed the suggestions in those communications that are contrary to the Sharia and prophets upon whom be blessings and peace sunnah, for to do so may lead to serious errors. A warning. The first warnings in this letter against communicating with spirits are against an approach that purports to be spiritual and has appeared from the West and from philosophy, spiritualism, and mesmerism. The criticism is not of the Sufism of a very few Sufis, which proceeds from Islam and Tasawwuf and other followers of the Sufi path, and resembles somewhat the communication with spirits, and has been exploited to some extent with the interference of the outsiders. It is true that they can harm others in some ways, but they do not deceive like the others, and they harbor no intentions of harming Islam. As for that approach of foreign provenance, it is opposed to both Islam and the Sufi paths, and it attempts to abstract the way of the Sufi mentioned here and devalue it. Those Sufis who are weak and do not adhere to the Sunnah should be careful not to allow themselves to resemble them. Said Nursi. Bediüzzaman's Defense in the Guide for Youth Trail, 5 March 1952. In his name be he glorified. To the Chief Judge of the Court, I request that you listen to these very brief statements about the very lengthy story of my life of persecution. The following are the reasons they have given for the last 28 years of unprecedented ill treatment, surveillance, and imprisonment. The first, they accuse me of being opposed to the regime. We say reply, every government has opponents. On condition they do not disturb public order or infringe security, no one is answerable for an idea or way of conducting themselves which they believe in with their hearts and consciences. For although the more than 100 million Muslims who were under the rule of the English and their tyrannical, religiously bigoted government for 100 years rejected their infidel regime due to the Qur'an and did not accept it, up to the present the English courts have not bothered them in that respect. And although the Jews and Christians who since early times have had a place among our nation and in its governments and have been opposed to its religion and sacred regimes and have held contrary, critical views, at no time have the courts of law interfered with them in any way. Furthermore, during his own caliphate, Umar, may God be pleased with him, was tried by a court together with a common Christian. The fact that the Christian's religious views were not taken into consideration by the court despite his being opposed to both the Muslim sacred regime and their religion and their laws shows that a court of law cannot be partisan but has to be unbiased. For the vicegerent of the earth was tried together with a common infidel. Thus, relying on hundreds of verses of the Qur'an, not only myself, but all people of conscience are opposed to a temporary regime that has replaced the Qur'an's sacred laws, and on account of the anarchy of corrupt civilization, And behind the screen of the liberties of the Republic is an absolute despotism and may be used as a tool to tyrannize religious people. Moreover, opposition to any government can never be deemed a crime. The second, they have inflicted punishments on me for 30 years on the pretext of the possibility of disturbing the peace and breaching security. I say this in reply. Although, according to the investigations of the court, there are above 500,000 devoted Nur students, and for 28 years we have been subjected to this cruel ill treatment, the 6 promises and 6 courts of law that have been concerned with the Nurjus have been unable to record any incidents involving them. This proves that the Nurjus are the protectors of public security. Through their instruction in belief, they instill a prohibitor in everyone's head and preserve public order. The fair-minded police of 3 provinces have affirmed this. The third, they have declared me guilty, saying, he wants to exploit religion for political ends. A decisive reply to this is my article entitled, "It is only the truth that speaks," in the 116th issue of Sebil Reshad. A summary of it is as follows. The answer: those who accuse of exploiting religion for politics, a person who is over 80 years of age and at the door of the grave, and whose whole life testifies that he is ready to sacrifice his whole world for religion, and if necessary his personal life in the hereafter, who has absolutely nothing in this world, and has given up politics for 35 years, and concerning this matter 5 courts have found no certain evidence, those making this accusation are totally wrong, unjust, and unfair. In addition to these slanders, they say that he wants to disturb public order and security. But the lesson in truth he has taken from the Qur'an and he has taught to his students is this: if one innocent man is found in a house or on a ship together with 10 criminals, the justice of the Qur'an forbids the burning down of the house or sinking of the ship lest harm comes to the innocent man. To burn or sink them in order to destroy one criminal when they hold 9 innocent people is therefore a grievous wrong, cruelty, and perfidy. In consequence, since divine justice and the truth of the Qur'an severely forbids harming or placing in danger by disturbing public order and security 90 innocent people due to 10 criminals, owing to that lesson of the Qur'an, we consider ourselves compelled religiously to preserve public order with all our strength. There is no doubt that our coward enemies who accuse us of these 3 or 4 matters and preoccupy the courts with us unnecessarily want either to exploit politics for irreligion or under the veil of communism, either knowingly or unknowingly, to establish anarchy in this blessed country. For any Muslim who leaves the fold of Islam becomes an apostate, an anarchist, and spreads poison in the life of society. For anarchy recognizes no rights and transforms human nature into that of savage animals. The Quran alludes to the fact that the secret society of Gog and Magog, which will appear at the end of time, will be composed of anarchists. Said Nursi. In His name be He glorified. Peace be upon you, and God's mercy and blessings forever and ever. My dear loyal brothers, firstly, our miraculous gilded Quran, which was written in such a way as to show at this time the miraculousness in the ordering of the letters, has been sent first of all to Germany to be printed. Efforts were made to have it printed in Istanbul, but this was abandoned due to such obstacles as the expense of printing in 3 colors. One section of it has been sent to Italy as a sample, since printing techniques there are highly developed. Attempts have again been made for its printing in Istanbul, and for now steps are being taken to have it printed in a single color while preserving the coincidences. Later, God willing, it will be printed in 3 colors and with full gilding in either Egypt, Germany, or Italy. Secondly, to be duplicated are an Arabic Quranic commentary and a collection, the Arabic Mesnevi of the Risale-i Nur, which is the size of Zulfikar and deserves to be written in gold, God willing. These works, which were written 40 years ago and are quite wonderful and of the greatest importance, and every discussion of which is the equivalent of a book or treatise, were approved of and uploaded by the leading sheikhs and ulama of the time. Speaking of just one of the treatises, they indicated its unprecedented worth and their powerlessness to comprehend it, saying, "This is not a mere droplet, but an ocean." We herewith give the glad tidings of these texts of the Risale-i Nur and await your prayers for their success. We send our greetings to all of you and wish you every success. The Enduring One, He is the Enduring One, your brothers, Ceylan, Zübeyir. This letter was published in the newspaper Büyük Cihad in Samsun. It was the cause of court proceedings being opened there, incited by calumniators. The court case resulted in acquittals. Our master, Bediüzzaman Said Nursi, the savior of the world of Islam, chief of the believers, and interpreter of the Risale-i Nur. The fact that, on the indication of the religious democrats, Afyon Court has given the decision for the Risale-i Nur's liberty and the return of all its treatises, letters, and collections since they contain nothing reprehensible, is clear proof of the truth you proclaimed years ago. You said, "The Risale-i Nur belongs not to me, but to the Qur'an, and proceeds from its effulgence. No force will be able to tear it from the heart of Anatolia. The Risale-i Nur is bound to the Qur'an, and the Qur'an is bound to the supreme throne. Has anyone the power to uproot it and tear it away from there? Knowing this to be shining evidence that this elevated service of yours is in the way of God and the Qur'an, and that the decision for its acquittal marks the dawn of happiness for the world of Islam, and particularly of this Islamic nation, we offer our congratulations to our beloved Master, who expectantly awaits such victories and is the head of the Nur family, has been appointed captain of the seas of truth and guide of humanity revolving in the darkness of disbelief. We congratulate too the religious democrats who in this way have won the love and support of the believers, and also the just panel of judges, and offer them our endless thanks. Today, the Quranic truth which for years you have striven selflessly to advance and uphold is unfolding vastly and filling the hearts of the believers throughout the country with joy. This proves as clearly as the sun just how elevated and brilliant are the sacred cause and work which you have been appointed to strive for and which you have successfully accomplished. Notwithstanding the difficulties and obstacles of the last 25 to 30 years, all your patience and fortitude and labors and exertions in publishing the Risale-i Nur, which occurred to your illumined heart from the Qur'an, furnish a fine example for the heroic mujahids of Islam. Dispelling the darkness of ignorance and misguidance with the rays of the inextinguishable lights of the sun of the Qur'an and their everlasting flashes, you have illuminated millions of hearts and made the believers grateful to you. This country and nation, this history and land will never forget this service of yours, this devoted self-sacrifice. If you travel to the eternal realm, your service will form a seed from which will sprout a lofty tree which will encompass everywhere. The large communities which will gather around that tree of light and the rising everlasting rays of the Risale-i Nur will perpetuate your work in even more brilliant and magnificent form. As the Risale-i Nur's interpreter, with the services you have performed for belief shining on the horizons of Islam, you are the chief guide of the present age. Esteemed herald of the noble Qur'an, in the 14th Muhammadan, upon whom be blessings and peace, century. Supreme Deity who has responded with the Qur'an's light in the face of the awesome darkness of this ghastly age. Our beloved heroic Master who has published everywhere with the pens of his hundreds of thousands of students the hundreds of thousands of copies of the Risale-i Nur, and has erected a Qur'anic barrier against irreligion and absolute disbelief. With this sacred service of yours, which is a mercy for all the worlds and brings solace and deliverance to humanity, you give the good news to the believers of the great festival of Islam's supremacy, which will embrace all the continents and the signs of which are just appearing. We congratulate you on this with all our spirits and beseech Almighty God for your long life and kiss your hands respectfully. The Nur students of Ankara University. A truth about the life of our society which was imparted to my heart. There are now 4 parties in this country. One is the People's Party, Halk Partisi, another the Democrat Partisi, another the Nation, Millet Partisi, and the other Islamic Unity, İttihad-ı İslam Partisi. In the event of 60 or 70% of the people being completely religious, the Islamic Unity Party may assume a leading role in present politics. But due to the deficient Islamic training of recent times, the latter party would have to exploit religion for politics in the face of the malpractices of present politics, and should therefore not assume such a role. As for the People's Party, since behind the screen of the law it has in truth given extraordinary, pleasurable, and widespread bribes to officials, and since together with all its own crimes of 28 years, the crimes of others, and the evils of the Unionists, and their Masonic members have been loaded on it, they appear to predominate over the Democrats in some ways. For egotism is strengthened by the lack of worship, and the numbers of little numbreds increase. Despite in reality officialdom being service, with such domination, mastery, and leader dictatorships, it has given certain officials powerful positions as bribes. From this, and from the treatment meted out to me, and from newspaper reports, and all their crimes, I perceived that they are prevailing over the Democrats in a sort of way. Whereas, a fundamental law of Islam is the Hadith, the ruler of a people is its servant, according to which the task of officialdom is not to act as ruler or chief, but to serve the nation. Democracy and freedom of conscience may be based on this law of Islam, for if power does not reside in the law, it passes to individual persons and despotism becomes absolute and arbitrary. As for the Nation Party, if it is Islamic nationhood, the basis of Islamic unity, in which Turkism has been dissolved, it is the equivalent of the Democrats and should join them. Racism and racial prejudice, which we call Europe's disease, was inculcated in us by Europe in order to split up the Islamic world. But this sick idea produces a state of mind which people find gratifying and enthralling, so every nation embraces it enthusiastically to a greater or lesser extent, despite its many harms and dangers. If the Nation Party was to win a majority and gain power due to deficient Islamic training and the predominance of secular education, the true Turks, who comprising only 30% of the population do not form a majority, and the other elements, who form 70%, would be obliged to take up a front against Islamic rule. For another fundamental law of Islam is the verse, "No bearer of burdens can bear the burden of another. No one is answerable or may be punished due to another's sins." Whereas, due to the vein of racialism, a person supposes he has the right to kill an innocent brother because of another man's crime, and even his relatives and the members of his tribe. In such cases, there is no true justice, and it opens up the way to extreme injustice. For the dictum, the rights of an innocent person may not be sacrificed for even 100 guilty people, is a fundamental law of Islam. This is a matter of the greatest importance for this country. It also presents a serious danger to Islamic rule. Since the truth is this, all religious Democrats and Democrats who are respectful towards Islam, in the face of the powerful, pleasurable, attractive supports of these two parties, you are obliged to take the truths of Islam as the basis of your support, for they are even more of a drawing force, both materially and spiritually. Or there is the possibility that the crimes committed down the years, which you did not commit, will be loaded on you as they were on the former party, and the members of the People's Party will adopt racism and defeat you completely. I felt this and am worried for Islam. Postscript. In my view, the following is the only way the religious Democrats may be saved from having inflicted on them the serious penalties which were dealt out following the Tijani incidents. For those incidents resulted from the unnecessary, arbitrary laws of the former party and their exploitation, and even due to its incitements. In this way, they may also be saved from losing faith in the view of the Islamic world. Just as the Democrats' power was increased tenfold by restoring the Arabic call to prayer, so it would be increased by returning Hagia Sophia to its position of 500 years. The religious Democrats should therefore announce officially the Risale-i Nur's freedom, for it has made a very favorable impression in the Islamic world, as well as winning the Islamic world's regard for the people of this country, and nothing harmful has been found in it by courts of law over 20 years, and 5 courts have ruled for its acquittal. They should apply a salve to this wound. They would then both win the good opinion of the Islamic world, and the tyrannical faults of others would not be ascribed to them. For the sake of the religious Democrats, and particularly persons like Adnan Menderes, I have dwelt on politics for 1 or 2 days, although I have given them up for the past 35 years. Said Nursi, nor students who have observed this fact and endorse it, Ceylan, Halil, Osman, Hamza, et al. Important good news for the Nurjus. Firstly, the president of the new government has understood the necessity of building the Madrasa Zahra in the province of Van, a large Islamic university similar to Al-Azhar University, which I have been pursuing for 40 years. Sultan Reshad gave 20,000 gold liras for its construction, and the former despotic government's parliament allotted 150,000 liras, signed by 163 deputies. It is a matter of paramount importance for the world of Islam, for the East, and for this nation. The President has evidently understood this, for among all the pressing affairs of state, he made this announcement, which I am sending you. Even if it does not come to fruition, it is truly auspicious that the very fact of its necessity has been understood. The President, Celal Bayar, said among other things in his key speech in the Parliament that the Ministry of Education is conducting investigations preliminary to founding the Eastern University in Van. He said, "All obstacles must be overcome to found such a learned establishment in Van, which is one of our eastern provinces. Initial steps must be taken in the next fiscal year." That is to say, the young university students who presented the president with a copy of our biography gave him to understand the Risale-i Nur's value. Secondly, these most significant words of the president are a sign that the invaluable services that the Risale-i Nur has performed and will perform for this country have been understood. The Nurjus should offer thanks for all the difficulties they have suffered and the confiscations of the Risale-i Nur, and not complain, since they have yielded this significant result. Your brother, Said Nursi, who who is ill yet pleased,